This episode is brought to you by Cadillac. Cadillac certified service technicians are factory trained to fit your vehicle with the tires specifically developed for it. And with our tire price match guarantee, you get the best fit for the best deal. Let us do the work. Available on select eligible tire brands at participating dealers only. Offer ends 12/31/2025. Terms apply. See dealer for complete details. Visit Cadillac.com/service to learn more.
Wow, that was fast.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Yesterday, we interrupted our regular show here in the Stone Zone to bring you breaking news that the relatively obscure Court of International Trade in New York had ruled that President Donald Trump exceeded his authority to impose tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. Prior to that, a U.S. District Court judge in Florida, Judge T.K. Weatherall, had suggested that President Trump had the authority to impose tariffs under that law, a ruling from the 1970s, but he did not issue a court order. According to the judge, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 gave President Trump the authority to set tariffs for reasons other than just raising revenue. Judge Weatherall wrote that President Trump's justification for the tariffs, both stemming the flow of illicit drugs into our country and resolving the atrocious trade imbalances, was sufficient to satisfy the terms originally set by Congress. But rather than issue an order, Judge Weatherall punted the case from a federal court in South Florida to the relatively obscure Court of International Trade in New York. And that three-judge panel ruled late yesterday that the president had exceeded his authority to impose tariffs on other countries under the IEEPA, as it's called. That three-judge panel at the U.S. Court of International Trade, which is extraordinarily low-profile court, look it up online, you see almost nothing, ruled Wednesday to set a temporary halt in President Trump's global tariff effort that he imposed, citing these emergency economic powers back on April 2nd. You remember that? It was what he called Liberation Day. Well, now, the president, before we were off the air yesterday, the president had appealed that to the federal courts, and only hours ago, a federal appeals court temporarily reinstated President Trump's tariffs after the Court of International Trade in New York said the president had exceeded his authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. The en banc court granted the Trump administration an immediate administrative leave less than 24 hours after this ruling by an obscure court. Strangely enough, one judge on the court did not participate. The request for an immediate administrative stay is granted to the extent that the judgments and the permanent injunctions entered by the Court of International Trade in this case are temporarily stayed until further notice while the court considers the motion papers. This is a smashing victory for President Donald Trump. Once again, we see the same thing where the courts are attempting to exceed their authority and disrupt the executive authority granted to President Donald Trump under the U.S. Constitution and affirmed in the last presidential election. According to CNN, the federal court's ruling in Wednesday's injunction, 30% tariffs on China, 25% tariffs on some goods imported from Mexico and Canada, and the 10% universal tariffs on most goods coming into the United States would have been halted. According to CNN, the obscure ruling did not affect the 25% tariffs on autos, auto parts, steel, or aluminum, which were subject to Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, a different broader trade agreement. This is going to be an ongoing issue, folks, in which liberal Democrat jurists who are anything but apolitical on the federal courts seek to undo the results of the last election. President Donald Trump has no choice but to quickly appeal these demented and baseless rulings, with, of course, the final backstop being the U.S. Supreme Court. We saw this previously when the courts ruled that President Donald Trump did not have the constitutional authority to deport illegal immigrant gang members with criminal records from the United States, as well as all illegals. We went through this same rigmarole, but with the U.S. Supreme Court finally ruling that Trump did have that authority so that deportations of dangerous criminals could then proceed. In the meantime, Dan Bongino, deputy director of the FBI, revealed shockingly that the FBI under James Comey had intentionally mishandled and hidden substantial evidence from the American public in a secret safe room, and that the contents of this room had been discovered and would soon be known to the American public. While discussing the remaining Comey loyalists in the FBI building, Bongino announced that the FBI discovered an entire room of mishandled and hidden evidence from the Comey years. He actually went on to say the FBI is working now to declassify these documents, and once that occurs, the public will be shocked to learn what is there. Bongino said, "Wait till you read the stuff that's coming out. There are people there who are really horrified at what happened. There was a room and we found a lot of stuff, a hidden room. Well, I wouldn't call it hidden, but hidden from us at least, and not revealed to us. We found stuff in there, and a lot of it, most of it, from the Comey era," quoting Dan Bongino himself. "We are doing our damnedest to declassify this as soon as we can. Once that gets done, you will read a lot of the stuff that were discovered." Now, I'm going to assume that yesterday's revelations that Nellie Orr, who was the wife of the FBI official Bruce Orr, who was one of the perpetrators of the Russian collusion hoax, and who clearly, based on documents released by Senator Chuck Grassley, chairman of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday, lied under oath to help cover up the entire Russian collusion operation, which was, as we've said on the show many times, the largest single dirty trick in the history of American politics. It was an abuse of power in which the full authority of the United States government and the extraordinary capabilities of our intelligence agencies were utilizing what the FBI and the CIA and the Justice Department and the White House under Barack Obama knew was completely fabricated evidence, the so-called Steele dossier, and the false claim that they still try to circulate that the Democrat National Committee had been hacked by Russian intelligence. They have never produced any evidence to sustain that. They point to the report of a company called CrowdStrikes after it was learned during my trial that the FBI admits they never inspected the computer servers of the DNC. They relied on this company CrowdStrike. That CrowdStrike report remained classified, but the head of CrowdStrike, Sean Henry, who just coincidentally happened to be a former deputy of Robert Mueller's at the FBI, admitted under oath to the House committee investigating the Russian collusion hoax that he had found no evidence whatsoever of any Russian hack. So Bongino says that this material will be released. He also implies a great deal it had to do with the Russian collusion hoax. He also spoke again about the attempted assassinations of President Donald Trump, and he insisted yet again that everything that there is to know is known. He was particularly critical of former FBI Director Jim Comey, saying, and I agree, this man is a disgrace to the badge, the FBI, and the country, taking personal shots while you're on the beach, implying a threat towards the president, and then blaming his wife for it, which, if you followed this kerfuffle, you know is exactly what Comey did. Meanwhile, one of President Trump's chief executive officers predicted that the legislative agenda passed by the U.S. House, the big, beautiful bill, would make every American family, $10,000 richer. This came, of course, from Kevin Hassett, the director of the National Economic Council, and he went on to say that the Congress recently passed Big Beautiful Bill, which includes the greatest single tax decrease in American history, not to mention the doing away with the tax on tips, doing away with the tax on Social Security and retirement, providing a new tax credit for those who buy their car or truck from a U.S. company, a vehicle made here, is the greatest single tax cut in American history. And therefore, if you voted against it, well, then you would be getting a 65% tax increase in January. If the Republicans in the Senate don't pass the Big Beautiful Bill, as President Trump calls it, it would therefore be the greatest tax hike in history. Meantime, on Monday, Federal Housing and Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte called on the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, to lower interest rates. Enough is enough. President Trump has crushed Biden's inflation, according to Pulte, and there's no reason not to lower rates. The housing markets would be in much better shape if Chairman Powell would do this now. This is just the latest effort to influence Powell and comes after the Supreme Court ruled last week that Trump can't fire the head of the Federal Reserve. There are many who have urged the president to do so, but sadly, he does not have that authority. The only thing the Congress can do here, of course, is to repeal the entire Federal Reserve Act, which frankly, Congressman Ron Paul advocated years ago, and I think would be an excellent first step. One other point here, and that is, you'll remember, some months ago, Elon Musk, who was then heading the Department of Government Efficiency, said that he was going to examine our gold reserves that were held in Fort Knox, Kentucky, with a very large section of our gold reserves held by the New York Federal Reserve in New York City. The gold has not been seen since 1974. You notice how you've heard nothing whatsoever about that since that time? I mean, where is the gold? Is the gold still there? If we learned that the gold was not there, if it had been pilfered or sold or stolen, would it really change anything? Since our dollar is no longer pegged to gold, that the dollar in your pocket, the printed money you carry around, is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. In other words, nothing, not a basket of commodities, not gold, not silver. This would be a scandal, but it's unclear, if the gold is not there, what the economic fallout would actually be. I'm kind of curious to know whether the gold is still there or whether it isn't. Maybe we will yet find out. But now the action turns to the U.S. Senate to see what they'll do with the Big Beautiful Bill. Now, Republicans are right to criticize the fact that there aren't enough spending cuts in this bill. Elon Musk showed us the way. He outlined trillions in potential savings and waste, fraud, and corruption. And whether or not Republicans have the guts to actually cut spending rather than just talk about it, well, that remains to be seen. We'll be talking about this more in the Stone Zone. So whatever you do, please stick with us and don't touch that dial. Later in the program, we're going to be joined by Rod Martin of the Rod Martin Report. He is one of the savviest economic and political analysts in the country. This guy was one of the founders of PayPal. He's very smart and he knows what he's talking about. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone
on the Red Apple Podcast Network. This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera a Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So it seems to me that we're at a crossroads. If the big, beautiful bill is not passed, the Council of Economics Advisors projects that we'll have a recession, a really deep recession, perhaps a decline of 4% of gross domestic product. On the other hand, if we pass the bill, you're going to see striking economic growth, just like we saw in 2018 and 2019 after the previous Trump tax cuts. Their modeling said that we'd have a $4,000 per person increase in income, also about a $10,000 increase for income for the typical family just over a couple of years. So this is going to be a crucial vote in the U.S. Senate, and we'll see if Republicans are serious. They don't have the kind of spending cuts in the big, beautiful bill that I had hoped. Elon Musk gave them the roadmap. We did hear from the White House that they will put forward a rescission bill that would cut spending by $94 billion. That sounds like a lot, but it's about 5% of the proposed cuts that Elon Musk actually found. So it's really kind of anemic in the greater scheme of things. Remember, there are 3 steps in Donald Trump's plan to revive our economy. Actually 4, if you're including getting energy prices down. That's already happened. We've had a sharp decline in the cost of a gallon of gasoline. We also need tax reduction on the working families of America. No, the tax cuts are not just for the rich. They're across the board. And, of course, the tariffs, where we're going to get an even playing field. Until his press conference after he announced his tariff efforts on the Liberation Day, as he called it, most Americans didn't realize that virtually every one of our trading partners is charging us a higher tariff rate than we are charging them. When you know that, you see the president's demands don't look that draconian. Lastly, I had to chuckle about this. In his new book, Jake Tapper revealed that former Vice President Kamala Harris was very angry when Joe Biden wore a Trump 2024 hat during a September 11th memorial event. After seeing Biden's actions turn into a viral video, Kamala asked her staffers, "What the heck is he doing?" She said, "This is completely unhelpful and so unnecessary." Tapper reported that this was the final straw for Harris, who stated she would not do a public event with Joe Biden ever again. I suspect that Joe Biden was still more popular than she was by Election Day of 2024. But Joe Biden's putting on that Trump hat What was that all about? Could that be because he was very angry about being dumped from the Democrat ticket against his will? Joe didn't want to go. He was forced out by Barack Obama and quickly replaced in an undemocratic process in which not a single Democrat primary or caucus voter voted. These are the people constantly whining about democracy. You're in the Stone Zone. We're going to be right back with Rod Martin of the Rod Martin Report, so please don't touch that dial. We'll be back in the Stone Zone in just a minute.
The Stone Zone
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We off? 30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes!
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree?
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet?
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
Hey, guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
We're shipping Father's Day gifts with a rapid-fire round of questions. Ready?
Yes. My gift. Can you pack it?
Yep.
Ship it?
Yes.
Guarantee it?
Of course.
Oh, send a set of golf clubs.
Oh, hole in one.
Protect electronics? Dog-proof it? Return it if they hate it?
Yes, no, and yeah.
Are you the UPS store?
Hey, we have a winner!
Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Most locations are independently owned. Product services, prices, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Visit a store today.
Oh, such a clutch pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom, too. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
The GOAT!
Save up to 50% with minimum purchase at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. Substack, Substack.com, is a place where writers and thinkers, right, left, and center, can express their views that the mainstream media is disinterested in because, well, they're not politically correct, or they may be offbeat, or they may be off the official fake news narrative. Among the liveliest takes there is Rod Martin. Rod D. Martin has the Rod D. Martin Report. The Martin Report, I urge you to check it out. And the man himself joins us now, Rod Martin.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So I should tell folks you are an entrepreneur, a founder and CEO of Martin Capital, an investor, a futurist, one of the guys that helped start PayPal. You're a staunch anti-communist. What I love is the fact that you're also a thinker. And the Rod Martin Report on Substack is a fountain of ideas and free expression. So I want to jump right into it because these court rulings are coming so fast you could get whiplash if you try to pay attention. But yesterday, we were told this incredibly obscure international trade court, which frankly I've never heard of before, in Manhattan, had suddenly ruled that President Donald Trump didn't have the authority to go out and negotiate trade deals with other countries. Now, just hours ago, a new federal appeals court has overruled that. You just wrote a great hot take on this. Rod, give us your take.
Well, it's completely absurd. It's a true travesty, and I give you about 1,800 words of analysis on rodmartin.org on exactly that. Came out about half an hour ago. The appeals court stayed the ruling for now. So the Trump administration will have an opportunity to appeal this. They seem to be going straight to the Supreme Court. Maybe they go to the appeals court first. But in the meantime, the tariffs continue. That's what the president has. The problem here is the grounds on which they overruled him. They actually applied very strictly non-delegation doctrine, which all good conservatives would support. We don't believe that Congress should have the right to delegate legislative authority to administrative agencies, the executive branch generally. But that's not really the situation here. This is a foreign policy issue, not a legislative issue. Congress has clearly acted in repeated acts going back to 1930 to permit and enable the president to use tariffs as a tool in the conduct of American foreign policy. And this has never been meaningfully challenged. This court, I think most people had never heard of. It was started in 1980, but it's the successor to the old U.S. Customs Court, which was established in 1890. And in all of that time, none of these activist Democrats have ever seen fit to question when Barack Obama imposed tariffs, or Joe Biden maintained presidentially imposed tariffs, or Jimmy Carter, or Lyndon Johnson, or FDR. It's a complete political circus. It is shameful, and it simply isn't the law.
Yeah, it's, as you say, it's madness. But we saw the same thing surrounding the question of whether the president had the authority to deport illegal immigrant gang members with criminal records in many cases, who are very clear danger to those around them and to the country. We actually had a court rule that the president had no such authority, which of course he does. The Supreme Court ultimately stepped in. I'm hopeful that they will do so again. Now, one of the things I like about the stuff you put up at rodmartin.org and that you also have at Substack is the fact that you've actually read The Art of the Deal. So you actually understand our 45th and our 47th president. That in itself, I think, is one of the reasons why your observations are so on the money. Give me your overall take on the president's tariff strategy, because I've said on this show and elsewhere, I actually don't believe that Donald Trump loves tariffs. I think he'd love to have no tariffs. He'd like to have an even playing field with no tariffs between any countries, where we could sell whatever we wanted in their country and vice versa. But that's not what we have. People say, oh, you're against free trade. Well, we want fair trade, and the trade hasn't been fair. So the president uses tariffs as a cudgel, and frankly, based on what I've seen, so far it appears to be working. But I'm more interested in your take.
You're absolutely singing my song. And this takes again and again on Fox Business and other fora, because it's just plain as day. Donald Trump has made his position clear. I would say possibly most clearly at the 2018 G7 meeting, where he just stood up and he told them, look, I'm a working guy. Obviously, the right outcome is to have no trade barriers whatsoever. That's going to be prosperity for everybody, but you guys won't play ball. And they wouldn't, and they didn't. And so now we get the reciprocal tariffs just to jerk their chains, the fact that everybody misses, and I don't understand why, is that America is the largest consumer market in the world. Everybody who exports has to sell to us. And by the way, a lot of these countries are heavily dependent on the export sector of their economy. Germany, 48% of their economy. China, more than 20% of their economy. And some of that gets transshipped through Vietnam and different places. Doesn't matter. You know, the bottom line is, without the U.S. market, China goes into a depression, and so would Germany, and so would much of the world. They need us more than we need them. So, of course, Donald Trump understands that. That's sort of his big thing. And you mentioned the art of the deal. I would also like to single out what I think is actually his 1997, The Art of the Comeback, which is just extraordinary particularly in the last chapter, which goes on at length about his political views, and it reads just like a campaign statement from 2016 or 2024. It's extraordinary how consistent this man has been over time, albeit picking up a pro-life position along the way. But otherwise, he's consistent as the day is long. And the people who haven't done the homework and won't do the reading always get him wrong, always misunderstand him, and they're not going to get any better.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would also point out his book, The America We Deserve, in which he actually foresees the rising threat of Islamic terrorism, and he actually predicts the attack on America on 9/11. An extraordinary book. I agree with you. The only issue, frankly, on which he's really changed is, I think with the birth of his son, Barron, he became pro-life. I think that gave him a new appreciation. But beyond that, if you go back and look at the speech he gave in New Hampshire in 1988, when he spoke to the Plymouth, New Hampshire Chamber of Commerce. And many people said, oh, is he running for president? Is he going to New Hampshire because he's running for president? No, he's going to New Hampshire to get exposure for his ideas. He talked about the folly of the trade deals. This was pre-GATT, pre-NAFTA. But he said, we're getting killed in these trade deals. We send social workers, they send killers. They send their best and brightest. We send bureaucrats. We're getting rolled. And why are we continuing to pay a disproportionate amount for the protection of Europe? Why are our NATO allies not paying their fair share for their own protection? I remember this like it was yesterday. He said, look, I understood that after World War II, they were devastated. They were destroyed. They were broke. We were still relatively prosperous. And the Marshall Plan was necessary, and so on. But now, with our economy in trouble, why are they not paying their fair share? This was 1988. Of course, in 2017, he made our NATO allies pony up. Every one of them was behind in their payments, and every one of them was forced to cough up millions and millions of dollars. Rod, you wrote this, and I loved it. Speaking of Trump's use and maneuvering for tariffs, you said, this is like Reagan's zero option all over again. Reagan deployed a large number of new nuclear weapons to Europe to counter the Soviets' similar deployment, while proposing that all such weapons should be banned. Everyone laughed until 1987, when he achieved exactly that. But speaking of Reagan, who you and I agree is one of the 20th century's greatest presidents, he also used market power, specifically a huge arms race coupled with collapsing the price of energy from which Russia derived the cash it needed to continue to compete, and he bankrupted the Soviet Union. Trump remembered this lesson, and now you say China is learning us. Talk to us about China. China, you were talking about how Trump is checkmating China. Expand on that, if you would.
Well, you're exactly right. This is Reagan's zero option strategy from what became the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty in 1987. When Reagan put it out there, everybody called him crazy on both sides of the aisle. But he was right. Putting pressure on the Soviets by deploying nuclear missiles, both the cruise missiles and the Pershing II, put the Russians in a position where they absolutely had tons of reason to actually abolish an entire class of nuclear weapons. It's the only time it's ever happened. And that was highly successful, and it was just because Reagan was a visionary and willing to go for the deal that these days Trump would go for. That most of our political class doesn't have the creativity to even imagine, and they're horrified by the concept. Same thing with using the Saudi alliance to collapse the price of oil. And that's where we're out. You just saw the trip to the Middle East. We're buttressing those alliances. We've got to bring Israel into an alliance with Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Gulf states, and that's already started the Abraham Accords. But in the process, we're isolating China. And Donald Trump understands perfectly clearly what the Beltway class has not, that China is a geopolitical threat. It's a regime run by a communist party that routinely threatens to nuke American cities, to invade an American ally in Taiwan. This is not Germany. This is not Japan. This is not a friend. This is at best a frenemy. And we have to decouple from them sufficiently that we're not dependent on them for strategic supply, and also enough that their economy is sufficiently depressed that they can't afford military interventions and an invasion of Taiwan or potentially Siberia or whatever they might attempt. Donald Trump gets it. Everybody before him failed in this regard, starting with Bill Clinton, letting China into the WTO, letting China have most favored nation status, and honestly taking tons of Chinese campaign cash in the 96 election. And that's the genesis of our allowance of these people.
No, you're absolutely right. I often say that Richard Nixon gets a bum rap. People say that Nixon, because he restored economic relations with the Chinese, is responsible for the threat that China poses today. But people don't recognize that at the time that Nixon went to China, China was a dirt-poor agrarian society. Most homes did not have indoor plumbing. The rural areas didn't even have electricity. The country had no technological capabilities. They had a military capability, but it was antiquated. It wasn't until the Clintons gave them most favored nation trading status, and frankly, Bill Clinton sold them in the Loral scandal, sold them our missile targeting technology in return for millions of dollars in illegal campaign contributions. These are the things that made China the danger that it is today. There was no way for Richard Milhous Nixon to see that 30 years later, after he played the Russians off against the Chinese and vice versa to secure a strategic arms limitation agreement, on which the Russians were going cold until Nixon announced that he was going to visit Beijing, and then suddenly they wanted to make a deal. There's no way Nixon could see that China would emerge as the threat that they have become. Folks, if you're just tuning in, this is the Stone Zone. We're talking to Rod Martin. You can find his great stuff at rodmartin.org. Don't go away, because we'll be right back with a bit more with Rod Martin, talking about the politics of the day. Right now we're focused on China, but I want to ask him when we come back about Russia and about Vladimir Putin and the quest for peace in the Ukraine-Russian war. Again, you're in the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. He's Rod Martin of the Rod Martin Report, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
My favorite thing about Shipt since I signed up for Target Circle 360? No price markups when I order same-day delivery from tons of local stores. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. I won't lie, I've had too much fun being like, markups on groceries? Not in my fridge. Markups on pet food? Not for my DOG. Markups on tools, electronics, home goods, meds? Not in my house. Anyway, it's awesome. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
Hey besties, listen up. I have a secret to tell you. LinkedIn now has improved the job search experience for nurses. Search by your specialty, the shifts you want to work, and the salary that you want to make. With so many employers hiring on LinkedIn, finding the perfect job is even more simplified. So don't spend months searching. Go to linkedin.com/nurses and find out why in the past year, more than 1.5 million nurses have used LinkedIn to search for their next role. That's linkedin.com/nurses.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back in the Stone Zone. We're talking to Rod Martin of the Rod Martin Report. You can find him at rodmartin.org, or you can find him on Substack. His writings are always provocative and exhilarating. Rod, I want to talk to you specifically about Syria, actually, because I think this is Donald Trump testing his theory that he's about commerce, as you say, not chaos, and taking Syria in out of the cold, restoring diplomatic relations, sending our ambassador to Turkey, Tom Barrack, an extraordinarily able individual who I've actually been friends with since 1972, as a special envoy to go meet with the Syrians. I think this is truly, truly brilliant, but I want to know what you think.
I completely agree. We have tried the neocon fantasy now for 25 years. And what we have gotten from that is not that great. It's not as bad as some people would say. I have to commend George Bush. Iraq is still a functioning democracy. I mean, it's not somewhere I'd want to live, but it's a lot better than it was. The question is, was it worth what we did? Was it worth what we spent in blood and treasure? And of course, you've got Afghanistan, which is a catastrophe. And Donald Trump goes to the Middle East and says, look, we're not going to talk down to you. We're not going to moralize at you. We don't have to agree on everything. What we need is to need each other. And if we need each other enough, we won't have war. We will have peace. We will get rich, and everyone will benefit. And honestly, that's a winning message, because he came back, depending on how you count it, with about $3 trillion in new investment commitments and arms purchases from Middle Eastern powers that have every reason to hate us. But they don't. They love him.
Yeah, I completely agree. I remember, this is evocative of the way he handled North Korea. Remember him telling me right after he was elected president in 2016, he met with both Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, who both told him, your biggest single problem is this lunatic in North Korea. He's a maniac. And Trump said, well, what is he saying? And they said, what do you mean? Trump said, well, what is he saying? They said, we don't know what he's saying. We're not talking to him. And Trump said, well, don't you think if he's on the verge of having nuclear weapons, as you say he is, don't you think you'd be wise to be in a dialogue and see what's on his mind? See if you can figure out what he's doing, where he's headed, see if you can talk him out of it? Wouldn't that make sense to you? And of course, when Trump went to meet with him, the mainstream media lost their minds. Look, the greatest single title that history can bestow is that of peacemaker. And Donald Trump is nothing if not a peacemaker. He is a maker of commerce, a maker of business, and as Rod Martin says in a terrific piece, Commerce, Not Chaos, the Emerging Trump Doctrine. You can find that at his website, rodmartin.org. I urge you to check that out, or swing over to Substack, where you can also see the Rod Martin Report. Always provocative, always interesting. Great interview, by the way, with Charles Payne on Fox Business, Rod. That's what gave me the idea to get you in here. I want to thank you for joining us today in the Stone Zone. And for those out there listening, until tomorrow when we meet again, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.